Right, I just thought today I'd have a play with three images, bringing them across for you, putting three images together instead of two on Photoshop. And these are the three images I've chosen to play with today. There's two water images and there's a woodland image. And I took the first two together at the same time about a year and a half ago, and I took the one at the bottom, the woodland image, about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So you can see that you do not need to take all images at the same time to use them as doubles. So I'm going to first of all bring the two water ones through into Photoshop. So we're going to edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. And what this is going to do is bring these two images through as layers on top of each other into Photoshop. And then we shall have a play and just figure out what looks good for these. Then what I shall do is return it to Lightroom and then bring it in again with the trees and the woodlands into Photoshop to create the final image. Right, so what we have here is the more textured. You get, again, these two fairly similar in texture strength. So we're going to have a play. Just going to roll over the top of, make sure we've got the top one selected, and we're just going to have a roll over. Some of these are quite interesting. It's quite creative, some of these results that you get through. It's really soft and sort of light and fluffy. Quite like that. This is starting to become more creative, so I'm quite liking that. There's not enough depth. I'm quite liking how, for the overlay, how the greens and the oranges and the structures coming through. So I'm going to stick with this. So if you remember the original, one of the waterfalls and the other one. And so what you've got now is you've got combining the colours and the structures coming through. So I quite like that. I'm just going to see how this works. And just to run through, bringing this in, see if I want it as strong. I do quite like it quite strong. I'm just going to maybe knock it. No, I'm going to keep it as strong as it was. I quite like that coming through. So you've got the textures and the details and the lines there. So I'm going to put that down as a flatten image, and then I'm going to file and save that. And what I'm going to do, once I know it's come through to Lightroom, so here it is, it's sitting in Lightroom. I'm just going to go back into Photoshop and get rid of it out of Photoshop. And then I'm going to go back into Lightroom and I'm going to combine that one and the trees this time. So again, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. So this time we're going to have the previously edited water image and the trees to play with. And this time the water image is going to sit on the top because it's the more textury image, whereas the trees are the more structural image. So let's have a play and see what that diagonal line's coming across quite strongly across there. We may have to change that a little bit. Quite like that, although I may have to play with the strength of quite like that actually. That adds something different, but I may well yet have to play a little bit with the angles and the end picture. So I'm going to go with soft light here. Let me just check what hard light does to it because I didn't get that far. Yeah, you've lost the trees in hard light. So I'm going to go, although we could just play with hard light and see what happens if we bring the trees back a bit. Actually, I quite like that. I love the greens coming through here. Because before, you've got the greens and you kept the greens, but with the texture, and you've got this lovely structural texture here. So I'm going to go with that. Just so without anything, it's quite a dull image. And then when you start bringing a little bit of texture through, you can just create an extra depth to the image. And I quite like that. It almost looks a little bit like there's some smoke coming through. So as I mentioned before, that's where I'm going to stop on that in Lightroom. Some people might do in Photoshop. Some people might do an awful lot more in Photoshop if you want to play with the curves and all that kind of stuff. I quite like that. I don't do an awful lot of detail there. I'm going to flatten the image and I'm going to bring it back into Lightroom to have a final play and create the final image. So here we go. So first of all, I kind of look at the things that I would normally look for. And so all these light areas at the top are quite bugging me. I've got a lovely leading line coming in from the bottom. It's a little bit light over here, a little bit light. So I'm going to, first of all, I do find I end up cropping my images quite early on, and I love the 16:9 for a woodland one. If you double press the L key twice, you end up with losing all the distractions of Lightroom. It's too much at the bottom there. I think that's about balance, and you've got line coming in. You've got a line coming in here, and you've got a line coming in through here. We might have to do something about darkening those down in a bit. So I think that's probably the first thing that I'm going to do because it's bugging me. So I'm just going to use a graduated filter here, set to darken. And I'm just going to pull it in across the edge there. I'm just going to have a play to see if we can just take some of that brightness off there. I think that's probably, I don't want to go too far, maybe just warm it up a little bit. There we go. Just maybe going to take a little bit of the colour off it so it's not looking too brown. There we go, it's not quite so in your face. I'm just going to put a quick vignette on it just to bring the whole thing. Okay, so we're now looking at quite a textural kind of image here, and then this is where I then start playing and just go through the contrasts to see if they help at all. That's what I think I like. We'll just check the highlights. We'll just highlight these so we can check whether we've got any blacks or whites burnt out. I'm going to just have a play with the blacks here, just pulling them back a little bit. To make a slightly stronger image. Push the whites too far, it begins to bring them too much. A little bit of vibrance maybe. I'm going to just pull this little area, I'm going to pull a little bit of detail back into that area with a graduated filter. Then it's got the old filter sitting on the top of it, so we will just, we can leave the dark and we'll just set that to 0 because I'm not sure I want to darken it, I just want to bring the texture and detail out. So I'm going to put a little bit of texture, a little bit of clarity, a little bit of dehaze on there. Maybe just knock it back on the very slightly. There we go. Brilliant. So that I'm just going to maybe tiny. With the saturation, I play very small amounts. I'm just going to have a look what it looks like if I adjust the temperature. I quite like the whites being white. You can have quite a cold feel. Just knock it back to the original. I quite like that. Check the pinks. Again, yeah, just a tiny bit I think. Just there we go. And I'm just going to play one more time with the highlight with the vignette and just check that it's too much. I don't want to be able to see the vignette when I look at the image. It needs to be very subtle. So that is my final image. So you can see, if you want to have a look back at the original that we started with 3 images, and go back, put those up. So we have that 1, 2, 3. If we bring them all through for the different stages. So if you remember, we started with these 2 water images. We created this watery image here, and then we added this trees on top, and we created the trees here. So from all these 3 interesting images, this is the final image. And I hope you can see that it's quite a creative, very textural kind of image compared with what was there originally. And it's just using your imagination. Don't be scared to turn images round or enlarge them a little bit or angle them, but do get rid of any distractions and try and balance the image the best you can. Well, I look forward to speaking to you again soon and presenting another tutorial. So do follow my YouTube page, and hopefully you'll see other things come through.